My name is John Silvester. I'm a reporter with the Age newspaper. Some people call me Sly of the Underworld. There are 5 million crime stories in the naked city, and this is one of them. In a time when even 2-bit gangsters have social media profiles, one of the oldest of the old school underworld figures passed away quietly in April this year, aged 84. Charlie Wootton didn't need to be well known to be well respected in the shadows occupied by hard men. With his death, he took a secret to his grave. Who murdered the notorious gunman Freddie the Frog Harrison? On February 6, 1958, Harrison pulled up at South Wharf in his 1953 Ford Custom Line to pick up his pay he hadn't earned and return a trailer he didn't own. As he was uncoupling the trailer in the shadows of the ship, the River Murchison, a gunman pulled out a shotgun and said, "This is yours, Fred," shooting his target in the head. There were 30 men near the car, yet no one apparently saw anything. About 12 potential witnesses declared they were in the toilet at the time. It was a 2-man toilet. The frustrated coroner threatened to have the toilet reconstructed in the court and invite all the reluctant witnesses to show how they fitted into the ablutions block. One witness, who was with Fred, said that when he heard the shot, he immediately turned his head left. The gunman was to his right. Wootton was the only real lead. Age 15, he was stopped on the docks by a policeman. The teenager was carrying a cardboard box of 12-gauge shotgun shells. There were 22 in the box and 2 in Charlie's pocket. The box originally had 25 shells. The missing one had been discharged into Harrison's head. Charlie remained silent, and the killer, John Eric Twist, was never charged. Twist was present when Wootton's stepfather, Harold Nugent, had been shot and wounded by Harrison, and this was payback. The teenager's mother ran the dockside tea stall where the River Murchison was docked. Wootton became a major figure in the painters and dockers before controlling illegal gambling south of the Yarra. He controlled multiple illegal clubs and set up a plush illegal casino which was raided within a week of it opening. You would go to Charlie's place when you wanted a bet, but there was no advertising, push marketing, and if you were over your head, Charlie would tell you just to go and have a spell. Wootton was determined to keep a low profile, but his name would appear on death notices over leading underworld murders, such as the death of Alphonse Gangitano and later Jason Moran. He was always discreet and would never mention the names of celebrities and politicians who would attend his illegal gambling dens. He was the last of the old school crooks. Joining us today is Robert Wootton. Robert, our families are intertwined in a way, although probably from different sides of the track. Sadly, your father passed away in April. His name was Charlie Wootton, and he was an absolute legend because Charlie just about ran all the illegal gambling east of the river, down at St Kilda, but it was a different time. A little bit rules between the police and people like your dad. You were one of 10 of Charlie's children, but the only one to follow him into the business.
Yeah, so I was the oldest and, sort of left school early, and Dad was adamant, "You'll be going back to school." So he sent me to a bookmaker's clerk school. Once I finished there, worked around the stables a little bit and got a bit of experience there, and turned 18, he said, "Come and work at the club." So, yeah, that's where I started.
Now, the club was pretty famous, Zorro's?
The Zorro Club in Ackland Street, 77 Ackland Street.
But there was a couple of different places up there.
There were. So there was about 3 or 4 different premises above shops in Ackland Street that were used on different occasions. When one premises got a little bit hot or tropical, we'd move it to a different one for a couple of months. But the Zorro was always the main fixture, yeah.
And there'd be a older doorman downstairs with a buzzer. So if he liked you, you press the button?
Yeah, Curly, if anyone come in, he knew. If he didn't know you, he'd ask, who do you know? But then if he sort of suspected that you were the other side, the buzzer would go and everything could disappear. So, yeah.
So talk us through a day. Zorro would open at 10 in the morning?
Roughly around 10 in the morning, yeah. They'd start filtering, the old-timers would start filtering in, sit down, play a game of Red Aces. The Red Aces would end up probably in the Zorro maybe 10, 15 tables a day, 5 people on a table. And that'd go all day, mostly all night. And then later on that night, the baccarat would start, probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock. And that...
In the morning or at night?
At night. So, yeah, so the baccarat, different crew, it'd start around that time and go, well, who knows, if it was a big game, it'd go right into the following day.
There was a group of older women who would turn up nearly every day?
Every night for the baccarat, yeah. That was, they'd come at 10 o'clock at night and sit there and wait for the baccarat to start. And they'd all have the same seats every night at the table. It was Elsie, Leah, Jamel, Sylvia and Edna. And they'd all sit exactly the same seats every night. It was like, you set your watch by.
And one of them would look after the ledger.
Okay, so, Bluey, who'd run the game, he'd take all the bets and run the ledger, and if the buzzer happened to go and the police came in, that ledger would go into Sylvia's handbag, she sat next to Bluey, and it'd be never seen again, until they left, and they'd be brought out again and carry on.
Your dad was very generous to them, but ultimately there was a tragedy.
Yeah, Dad bought a place on the Gold Coast, an apartment, and he sent a couple of them up there, a couple of the older women up there to have a good time, and unfortunately crossing the Gold Coast Highway, they were hit by a car, sustained bad injuries, and one of them passed away, and Dad was really sorry about that because he'd taken someone's grandmother away from him indirectly, and always plays on his mind, yeah.
Your dad was known to be quite... It's funny because he knew a lot of underworld figures, and so he'd associate with killers, but you weren't allowed to swear in front of a woman.
No, it was one of his pet hates. One of his pet hates is swearing in front of women, yeah. And if I ever saw him get angry, that was the main catalyst. Charlie
always flew under the radar, but there was that incident where he was headline news back in 1958 when the big gangster of the day, Freddie Harrison, was killed, shot dead on the docks, and Charlie was only a teenager at that point, and he was grabbed by the police leaving, and he had a box of the shotgun shells. It was a box of 25. There was one in each of his pockets. The rest were in the box, but there was one missing, which, of course, was in Freddie's head.
Yeah.
And it was Charlie's stepfather, Harold Nugent, who Harrison had shot in the hand. What do you know about that?
Okay, so Dad never ever spoke about this ever. He'd only mentioned why it happened, and that's a group of those guys went rabbiting on the Sunday. Harrison, Harold Nugent, my grandfather, and someone else, I think Jackie Twist. And an argument broke out between Harold and Harrison. And Harrison pulled a shotgun, pointed at Harold. He grabbed it with his hand and put it up, and it discharged and blew Harold's hand off. So that was the catalyst of what happened to Harrison the following morning down at South Dock. Dad never spoke about it at all. It was something that, he just didn't Didn't ever discuss.
Except when you had holidays at Rosebud.
Rosebud, yeah. Well, yeah, and that we used to have holidays, school holidays we'd spend up there with our grandfather, the family home up there, and Jack Twist lived up there, and a few of them, and they'd all go fishing. They were good family friends, yeah.
And he would point out a place at Seaford.
Oh, at Seaford on the way up there, yeah, we'd drive up. So Dad, after that episode, when he was 14, I believe, he went into smoke for a few months and was kept between the highway and Seaford Beach. There was a little alcove in there, and that's where he spent his holiday for a few months in there.
And he took over the gambling business.
So the gambling was all run by Jimmy Nugent, a magnificent gentleman, Dad.
That's Harold's brother?
Harold's brother, yeah. So Jimmy ran all the clubs in St Kilda, and a wonderful man, great. Dad actually, worshipped him. So, yeah, Dad took over from Jimmy once Jimmy passed away of illness, and, yeah, so that's how he became the leader of that.
Now, the manager of the Zorro was a Korean War veteran.
Johnny Nobbs, yeah. So John was a Norfolk Islander, big, thick-set guy, one leg. He lost his leg in the Korean War. He used to run the club, and very, very religious man, but Christmas Day, John would cook up a big Christmas lunch and go around in his little bus and pick up the pensioners and that and feed them up at the Zorro, because the Zorro was closed, Christmas lunch. Yeah, he was a very generous man, lovely guy, John, and ran the club, with an iron fist, but, always happy to help the underprivileged, did a lot of charity work.
If somebody wanted to buy him for a loan, well...
Yeah, so John was always, he'd turn his pockets out and there's nothing there. There's, although he'd lend people money, and they'd get to their limit, which was whatever, $50 or $100. And, no, you've had your limit. And, John would upend his leg and, there's nothing in there, because we all used to say he'd hide the money in his wooden leg. Then they'd go to father and say, Charlie, I'm on the limit with Johnny, So Dad would go with his pocket. You go and pay Johnny, and then you can get on again. So that's how that worked out. Yeah. So,
but there were a lot of clubs. The Hungarian Club.
The Hungarian Club came about because it was a Hungarian social club, which was on the opposite side of Ackland Street. Beautiful room, big room, and they had a dwindling clientele. So Dad took that over, and had a few Hungarians stick around and play cards of a night. So that was sort of more towards the end of the Zorro, and that was over the road. He had what was known as the Jewish Club around the corner, which was sort of a feeder club. The older Jewish men, in their 80s, and that'd go around there and play just a quieter game, quieter pace, not as hectic and as the Zorro or the Hungarian Club was. So it was more of a retirement phase for them, So there was a Jewish club, and there were other clubs in Ackland Street.
As we know, my father was a gaming detective.
Legendary.
And would be raiding those places.
Yep.
And some of the old Jewish gamblers wanted to meet me many years ago because of my father.
Yeah.
And I remember them saying, one said to me, "You know how we know God was Jewish?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because he made Greek gamblers for us."
Yeah. When I say your father was a legendary gaming squad police. He had no peer back in the 50s and probably 60s, well before my time and Dad's, but still spoken of very highly right up until the 80s and 90s. There was no more feared gaming squad copper than Fred Silvester.
You said Maltese Joe from the Cypress Club.
Yeah.
Told you we aren't.
Yeah, so one night in Lonsdale Street there was a club known as the Cypress Club. So Maltese Joe was dealing the cards this night, and his room was full, and he kept brushing the dust away from the shoe, or the cards. There was dust coming down on the table, and they were on the felt, and they were brushing it away. And next thing, the the buzzer went, and actually the game was run in and everything was upended, and it was your father. And he said, don't worry about putting everything away. I've been watching you through that little hole upstairs, and that's where the dust was coming from, a little hole in the roof that your good father had drilled through and was watching them from there. So
yeah, one of the only survivor is Nick Cecil, and he told me that on the ground floor was a tobacconist. And so they went in there and grabbed the tobacconist on some bogus charge, took him back to Russell Street to interview him, knocked off his keys and got one cut for the front door. So that's how they got into the ceiling. And of course you couldn't upend the place because you already had seen it, observed it.
Yep, it was done.
We've done quite a few podcasts this year in Naked City. If you like this one or any other episode, why don't you leave a review? Here's one from Grim City's finest. He might look like Uncle Fester, but he tells a good yarn. One of the best Australian crime podcasts. Mr. Silvester can write a decent article too. Thanks very much. I reckon you might look like Lurch. Another one, Sly is easy to listen to. Lovely. I listen to a lot of podcasts. With many of those podcasts, I give up listening before it's finished. Rarely do I give up on an episode of Naked City. Maybe it's because they're very quick. If an old leather chair and a glass of scotch had a voice, it would sound like Sly. His no-nonsense, unflappable approach makes me lean in and listen more intently. So, Sly, when's the next season coming out? Come on, hurry up. Hang on, this one hasn't even finished. That's from Mike in Perth. Your dad always was happy with a fair cop. If they caught him, fair enough.
Yeah, it's, back then it wasn't a big deal. It was what they used to call a civil offence. The players, I think, would get fined $10, and whoever was running the game, $100, you know, which was always old Izzy. He'd always say, yep, it's my game. And the club had always paid those fines, so there was no conviction. It was just, just you wouldn't even have to go to court for it. So it wasn't a big deal, but it was an inconvenience, and Dad would say that's their job.
It's funny, I mean, it was illegal, but when you consider gambling now, where there's aggressive advertising, people are, going broke and so on. But back at Red Aces, if you ended up with nothing, you'd be given cab fare home.
Oh, yeah. After the game, after the baccarat, there'd be a cube 20, 30 metres long with players lining up for what we call the fare, which was their fare home. So everyone would wake up with something in the morning. It'd generally be a $10 note, regardless of the outcome of the night. Everyone would get a fare home, whether it's wake up with in the morning, as I said, or to put a loaf of bread and a pint of milk on your table in the morning. Everyone would be, go home with something in their pocket.
At one point, you're flying, you're a croupier, and it's bad manners not to tip.
So being Charlie's son, I was a Manila dealer, and every hand with Manila, you've obliged to tip the dealer. So there were players that, they'd get their 5. Where they'd get 5, I'd probably get 20, which, that's just the way it worked. Every hand, so you'd work half an hour on, half an hour off. And in that half an hour, I'd probably get up with $200 in tips.
So what would you make a night?
Oh, varied. Nothing under $800 a night, $800, $900 a night, $1,500 on a good night,
But your old man gave you some fairly good advice then.
Dad was adamant, this won't last forever.
Because he knew the casino.
Yeah, he knew. Even in the mid-'80s, like when there was no sign of the casino coming, he was adamant. He kept telling me, this won't last forever. So be prepared, which you never were because you just don't think it's going to end, it's just... But it did come to an end, and then he told me to go out and get a job.
The moment they said, we're having a casino...
Well, yeah, as soon as Crown opened, which was 94... was a year I went and got a job and been there 33 years since. But, yeah, as soon as Crown opened, that was it. That was the end of the gaming as we knew it. The fines all went through the roof. You know, there were huge fines for running a common gaming house. I think it was in the vicinity of $100,000. So it was no longer viable. You'd taken a bigger risk than it was worth.
Yeah, well, it's funny, isn't it? Because, they had the illegal machines up in Lygon Street and elsewhere, and the fine there was a pittance, so they could seize the machine, and there was a whole industry in replacing them. And so everyone's going, oh, we can't do anything about it. The moment Crown opened, they put the fines up for the machines, for the two up, for anything else. And because the government, of course, was in partnership with the casino. They were making a fortune.
Yeah.
So they had to close down everything else. So previously there was never the will. And I believe the reason they didn't sort of try and run your dad out of business was they knew that void would be filled by somebody else, possibly the ratbags out of Sydney that were full of violence.
Yeah, well, Sydney was a different atmosphere to Melbourne. You didn't pay in Sydney, you'd be dealt with, whereas in St Kilda or Melbourne, you didn't pay. You didn't pay, they'd come back. Dad was never, ever worried about someone not coming back, They'd come back eventually. There was nowhere else to go, whether you could pay or not, whether you still owed. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty still owed, but it was never, ever a concern of his. He had plenty, so.
Well, he had plenty because he had a house on the Golden Mile in Brighton.
He did, in Glendon Avenue, yeah. He had the Rolls Royce and he had about 25 racehorses or harness horses at the time. So, yeah, he had plenty, but, soon lost it all through gambling. It was nothing for him to throw $100,000 on a harness horse in the 80s, which would buy you a nice suburban home out of Melbourne, somewhere. Win, lose or draw, it'd be the same result, next race. So,
well, he did have some help at one point because he was warned off because of trying to fix the quaddies.
Quaddies, yeah. He was warned off all harness tracks, all race tracks actually in the world for rigging quaddies. And back in the day, if you had a quadrella anywhere and your horse was scratched, there was no substitute. You'd lose your money. One particular night, I think it was at the showgrounds, it may have been Moonee Valley, but he had the mail that a hot favourite, which was a champion horse, could not get beaten. The last leg of the quaddie was sore and was most likely not going to take its place. So he instructed the trainer to take it to the races, warm it up, notify the vet prior to the race. Subsequently, that horse was scratched. Everyone else who didn't know lost their money, and Dad made a killing. And so that was he was warned off all harness, all tracks.
Didn't work much. He drove his luxury car to the car park.
He could drive his car. Warned off. He'd park at the top of outside the track, but still in full view of the track in the car park, and you'd see 20 people running up to the gate or to the fence, money being poked through the fence to go and put bets on. It was at Cranbourne or Warragul or wherever it may be. About 18 months later, he got a telegram from the Harness Racing Control Board asking him, telling him that his ban had been lifted and he was welcome back on course, but because the turnover had dropped. So, he never really went back. He used to go to Moonee Valley every Saturday night and sit up high up in the grandstand with a few around him and bet through there. But, he never went back to what it was.
Tats Lotto?
Won Tats Lotto twice. Yeah. First time he won Tats Lotto, a couple of uni students, Jewish boys, come and said, Charlie, we've got this system at Tats Lotto. It costs so much to put on. And Dad said, well, we'll fill it out, we'll do it, and we'll put it on. First week they put it on, they won. And at the time it was one of the biggest wins. He won first prize and divided it up against a big party. And so next week thinking, they're rubbing their hands together, they put it on again, no good. And they put it on for another 12 months. They didn't win a prize. And on the anniversary of their big win, they used to put the same numbers on again. In probably 20 years, John, they'd never won a bean. It was just that one-off, just a freak of nature that, they won it. And I think the headlines he wrote, he was interviewed by the Truth newspaper, and they said, I guess the HRB or the Harness Racing Control Board now think I'm rigging Tats Lotto. So...
but he had a second win?
He had a second win, sometime later with another group of guys, which wasn't as big, but was still handy, and that wouldn't have lasted them long.
Well, not if you put 100,000 on a frigging race.
Correct. No, it wouldn't last long.
It's chump change. The red aces, there were a number of tables, different limit?
Yeah, so 5 was the minimum, 10 to 20 was the average, and then later on in the night when you get some bigger players, $50 game, and the rate was, I think, 10%. So if you're playing a $20 game, $100 to the winner, but they pay $10 or $20 in rake.
Seems quaint, but it was tea, coffee, sandwiches, maybe some soup.
Yeah, never. No one was ever charged for that. It was all free. There was no alcohol. Dad was adamant, no alcohol. It was bad enough having the gaming in the premises. No alcohol was allowed, but tea, coffee, sandwiches, whatever you wanted, was supplied.
He dipped his toe in trying to get a sort of schmick casino, the one in St Kilda Road.
That was St Kilda Road. That was probably early 70s. He bought a roulette wheel from Las Vegas, magnificent roulette wheel and a dice cage, and they'd set up a illegal casino on a premises in St Kilda Road. I think it lasted a week before the gamers ran through and confiscated everything. The roulette wheel ended up at Rest Point in Tasmania. It was just one of those amazing things. His clientele included, a couple of politicians well-known, actor Alwyn Kurtz and a few other well-known people. And, it lasted a week, that place.
Yeah, Alwyn Kurtz became famous because he was the inspector in the old Homicide series.
Correct.
And Alwyn was a bit of a method actor because he would go to a pub in South Melbourne on Friday and have a fairly long lunch, and to impress much younger women towards the end of the lunch or heading into the early evening, he would open his sort of suit jacket and show his gun, which happened to be, of course, a fake gun from the show. And the publican would ring the local police who would arrive, and they would go, "Inspector, we're here to offer you a lift home." And he would hop in the back of the police car and be driven home. So everyone looked after everyone.
It's a beautiful story. He's a wonderful man. I got the pleasure of meeting him when I was very young, and I was gobsmacked because here he is, I see him on Homicide of a night, and here I am meeting him, shaking his hand. And he was a lovely man.
Lionel Rose was a regular there.
Quite regular, yeah. Dad and Lionel had a great rapport. They were very, very close. Dad worshipped Lionel, and vice versa. And Lionel would come in after a night out, and he'd always manage. We'd have to give him a lift home, get someone to drive him either to Druin or later on down at Edithvale, wherever he lived. Made sure he got home safe. But the lift home, whoever we'd get to give him a lift home, took a few different turns, and we've just got to stop here. So Lionel he'd never get home. He was an amazing man.
The movie on him.
The movie on him, I played Dad in that movie. That was filmed in the Zorro, a part of it, and the gambling side of it was filmed up in the Zorro Club, and Lionel was present and directing it from afar, and a great time. Yeah, it was a good Rose Against the Odds, it was called. It was
Louis the Jaw was in that as well?
Louis Trifunovic, well-known stuntman. I saw him at Dad's funeral. He's 80 now. Louis' amazing story. He was a Hollywood stuntman, came to Australia and did a lot of stunts and trained a lot of young stuntmen in Australia and filmed quite a few movies. Louis was in The Man from Snowy River. He's the one that got dragged across the log, hanging out of the saddle on a horse. Yeah. That's Louis. Amazing, amazing man. Yeah, Louis the Jaw.
Well, there was a Hollywood movie type scene at the Russian poker at Beaconsfield Parade.
Yeah, so Dad bought a penthouse in Beaconsfield Parade, 333 Beaconsfield Parade. It's the top floor, just right on the beach. The back of it overlooked Albert Park Lake and the city. It was a magnificent property, turning it into just a private game. Louis lived there. We had a few twists and turns with that place. The opening night, unbeknownst to us, there was a major drug raid a few floors down, and here we are upstairs thinking, what's going on? But we got through that. But later on in the year, we were sitting up there having a quiet game, and my sister's birthday actually, and they'd gone, and then we sat down to play. We could hear these sort of noises on the roof because we were the top floor, and I sort of looked at Louis, and Louis looked at Dad, and then we went out into the balcony and looked up, and all of a sudden he's, what are you doing up there? And it was the Soggies, the SOG, they'd come over on ropes and smash the windows to get into the penthouse, and it was everyone on the floor, and that was basically the end of the penthouse, that night. So, it was amazing.
But they didn't pinch anyone?
There was no pinch that night. No, there was nothing there. We were just playing a game, private game, and there was no money on the table. Yeah, so there was no pinch, but certainly made a mess, and was good riddance. I believe they got a full page in the Police Gazette or Police Journal a couple of weeks later. So, no, it was good exercise for them. Yeah,
well, of course, the police wanted to know, particularly at Zorro, who was who in the zoo, who's sitting with who. Then you could work out, which which gangs were working together and things like that.
Yeah, because of course, the consorting law was non-existent then. It's been sort of phased out. So now they have to sort of do their own reconnaissance and as you said, they'd go in and see, oh, he's sitting with him. And there was always, great reason for it.
But if you were quick enough, all the cards and everything was gone and you were just sitting watching television.
Watching TV. The cards could stay on the table. It was just the money and the ledger, and the tables were separated, so it didn't look like it was a big game. And then, we'd be just sitting around watching TV. And
different days now. The major crooks are recruiting kids on apps, so the police don't even know the connection and the violence. And
no, there was no violence, no trouble. Yes, we had a doorman, but he was an elderly man, so there was no big muscly guys running the door or that. There was just never any trouble, and we were in St Kilda. Dad drew the line at having heroin dealers or hoons or guys that lived off the earnings of prostitution. They were not welcome.
Yeah, and I know from some pretty reliable sources that when things did get a bit, to use your term, tropical, and if there were particular groups that were going to butt heads, he would often be the mediator between them to try and negotiate. So, he'd probably stop more violence than actually saw.
Yeah, there was always an easy way to solve things, and Dad certainly had a way of bringing two parties together that were at loggerheads. Yeah, so one particular time I remember just a simple thing that two restaurant owners had separated. One had bought a restaurant within the required boundaries, and it was going to court, and then they both come to see Dad. Dad was friends with both of them. They were both clients at the club. He sat down and spoke to them, and it was resolved without any legal issues or anything. It was just resolved and onwards and upwards, So he had a good way with people, a good way of putting his, case across, and, we all have to get along, so.
Yes, it was the days, I've said your old man, he broke the law but stayed within the rules.
Yeah, correct. The gambling, that was all it was with him, it was gambling, and he was probably, the biggest gambler around. I'm not talking Mr. Packer or things like that, but in Melbourne he was one of the biggest gamblers, and he was a firm believer in karma. So he wouldn't, he didn't get into drugs or anything like that. A lot of his associates did, and they were treated with respect, but never always at arm's length. Yeah.
He was the victim of crime himself because he used to accept jewels, diamonds and silver payments.
So this is a classic story that He used to love the old Commonwealth banknotes, so we'd get quite a few of them across the table at the game, so he'd just put them aside and keep them for himself. And then we had a few diamond merchants who'd come to the game, and whenever they'd get involved or lose, they'd pay part cash and part diamonds, which suited Dad down to the ground because he had his own jeweller. He used to put them into a safety deposit box in Ackland Street in the Westpac Bank, so along with his Commonwealth notes and his diamonds and a bit of gold, scrap gold and that. And so he was home one day and his partner rang him at the time and said, "Oh, Charlie, the bank's been robbed." He said, "Yeah, so what?" She said, "Oh, the bank's been robbed. Yeah, the bank manager's here. He wants to see you." He said, "It's got nothing to do with me." She said, "Oh, he wants to see you." So he got up, he had his hour-long shower and hour doing his hair and moseyed up to Ackland Street, and the bank manager was there, and he was white. He said, "Oh, Charlie, look, we employed a young guy. He had the keys to the bank. There's been a robbery. The only safety deposit box that's gone missing is yours." Dad just shrugged his shoulders and said, "Oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Police wanted to talk to him and there's nothing in it." So, but there was stuff in it, but he just copped it on the chin and moved on. So,
well, if you're a big punter, that's what you got to do. If you worry about losses,
that's
don't
correct.
be in it.
So he just moved on, and life went on. It was back to the back row that night.
Well, Robert, thanks for joining us. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and good luck in the future.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me.
Good on you. This episode was produced by Tammy Mills and mixed by Cormac Lally. Thanks to Tom McKendrick and Lisa Muxworthy. And as we say, there's a touch of evil in all of us.
Again, this is Anthony Quayle saying there is a touch of evil in all of us. Good night. Pleasant dreams.